everybody, Blair here, and I have an interview today with my friend Arounna Khounnoraj, and she is in Toronto, and I thought it would be so fun to bring her on because she is involved in so many different mediums, in textiles, in altering textiles and embroidery and things like that. And so for super selfish reasons, I wanted to bring her on. So thank you so much, Arounna, for joining us today.
Thank you, Blair, for having me.
So let's get into it. You're in Toronto. Tell us about your business in Toronto with your husband, John.
Our company is sort of multidisciplinary, so we do a lot of different things. I do mainly textile related work, and then John makes furniture and does sort of small wood pieces, and he also does painting and a bunch of other different things. And we kind of started as a business where you know, we were both artists. I was a sculptor and he was a painter, and we wanted to make things that was for the everyday, but things that were based on the handmade, so things that weren't mass produced. And so a lot of the stuff that we produce is all in-house. So we've done it all from the start here. And so right now, like post-pandemic, we're kind of shifting towards doing more one-of-a-kind work and maybe less production work, because we both feel like we're getting old and it's kind of a lot of work to do production, and I mean making like bags and things. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. We call it the retirement phase.
Yeah. And you're and what I love about what you guys do is there's always been this debate online about, you know, art versus craft, which I've never really subscribed to, because I feel like it's special in my world to elevate anything that's considered craft into art. And I feel like that you do that. You create these everyday objects with different mediums, whether it be, you know, altered fabric or embroidered or punch needle or anything like, or wood or anything like that. And it's this beautiful everyday object. And I love that. I think that so many, I think a lot of people online aspire to have figured out that equation, as you have done so well, because you really do have your hand in a lot of different things.
Yeah,
you look very busy.
I am very busy. It's interesting. One of the funniest things I always think, you know, in having a conversation with somebody is when someone says they don't have time. And I feel like, yeah, there's not a lot of time, but it's the way you manage your time and how to use your time. And it was interesting because during the pandemic, I kind of loved it because I didn't have to do anything really social. I'm a little bit, you know, I'm outgoing, but I'm also kind of antisocial. And it was like, oh, I don't have to go here or do this, and I'm just going to be stuck in my studio doing work. That sounds like a great idea. And so it was just, you know, John and I and the kids, and we were just kind of nesting, and it was actually a very nice time, because I felt like there was a lot of things that I got to work out and ideas, and then we made some, you know, big life decisions, and it was a really good time. And so I try to manage my time. We always say that we have like 2 shifts, so we do like morning shift and the evening shift. And so when the kids are at school, we're busy working, and then when they're home, you know, there's this family time, having dinner and doing different things. And then when they go off to do their homework, and they go to bed pretty early, we go and we do our second shift, and we're working until the wee hours of the night. So we always try to manage to find time in doing it. I think the reason why I have a good kind of grasp on craft ideas and art ideas is that when I was growing up, it's interesting, you know, I was exposed to a lot of textile work because of my mother. And I went to art school, I think almost like in a way to escape it. like, oh, I don't want to do what she's doing. I'm going to go and do, you know, this kind of education. I worked with really hard materials like metal, clay. And then the interesting thing is, as I was finishing my art education, I had this conversation with one of my professors, and he could tell that I was sort of struggling. It was almost like I was conflicted in a way. And he asked me, if you can remember your earliest moment or experience with art or making, what brought you the most comfort? And I thought the first thing that came to my mind was working with my mother with textiles. And that was the thing that brought me the most comfort and the most sort of like, I just felt like myself. And so then the work started kind of shifting towards more textile based work. So I wasn't working with those hard materials. I was, you know, working with stitching and crocheting and doing weaving and all these different types of things, and just trying to find my voice in all of that. And then when I finished grad school, I did a art residency at the Toronto Harbourfront, and it's a really great center that's government run, and they have like the glass studio, ceramic studio, jewelry, and textiles. And then at that point, I was kind of exposed to every type of textile you can imagine, like weaving and dyeing and printing. And I just really found that printing was something that I could really connect to, because it was a way of translating my drawings onto cloth or any other material. And then that's sort of how the business started, was from that point. So I went from doing kind of art-based things to more kind of production and trying to kind of explore those two ideas. So it's interesting now that I'm moving towards more less production and more one-of-a-kind pieces and more art pieces. And I think it's just 20 years of making repetition, like repetitive things, that I just feel like this urge to do one-of-a-kind pieces. And I've been trying to do that throughout my practice. Like once a week, I'll try to do some experimental kind of things, and then I'll make a piece. And I've really been enjoying that. So that's
I like that. I like that idea of like making a goal, like once a week, you're going to experiment and play, because I think it's so easy, because you've been doing this a really long time. I've been doing this a really long time. I remember you back, I think I followed you on Flickr back, 2007, something like that. I had your ABC, your wood piece,
Yeah.
when my kids were little. And I think that when as what we do evolves into more of a business, you do sometimes feel like there's no time to experiment or play. And I think it's so important to remember all of the things that can come from that. Like during the pandemic, I started playing with chicken scratch embroidery, and what could I do with it, because I didn't have a studio, and we were locked down at our house, and I had time on my hands, and that evolved into a whole other thing that I may have not had time or made time to play with had it not been for those circumstances. So I love that idea that you make time, or try to make time once a week to do that.
Yeah, I think for us, I think it taught us a lot, having that sort of period of isolation, because prior to the pandemic, I was doing so much teaching, like travel teaching. I remember 1 month I was only at home for 1 week, and the other three, I was traveling from city to city, going from place to place. And I don't know what it was, but I was just doing so much of it, and it really affected my studio practice, because I wasn't home enough to kind of work on new things or new projects. And then this year, as the world kind of was slowly opening up, I've been turning down a lot of opportunities, because I felt like it just wasn't worth my time to spend all this time traveling to teach for a few moments and then go back home and then try to readjust to, life and work life and just everything. And I just thought it's just not worth the time to do all that. And then what was great about was the Zoom teaching. It was great, because then I never had to leave the house, and I could reach a larger audience, you know. I remember doing one workshop with Toast, and we had like 350 participants, and they were from all over the world, and it was just amazing. And I was thinking I could never do an in-person workshop with that many people.
With that many people, yeah.
Yeah, you couldn't. And so it was interesting how it kind of pivoted. And I think it's, you know, as much as it was like a really horrible time for us, I felt like for us personally, it was a really good time because it made us set priorities of what was important. Because I felt everything was getting so muddled because you're just trying to run a business. And then now I find like so many people are struggling now. I know so many friends who are like, have closed their business down or have, you know, gone to go get jobs because running a craft business, running an online business is not for the faint of heart, for sure. It's very, very challenging sometimes, and you're constantly trying to, I always describe it as like running on a hamster wheel. You're constantly running, and you're kind of scared to, you know, stick your leg out because you might fall. So,
well, and then you're nervous when you're not running, you know.
Yeah,
you're just not, it's a weird feeling. Yeah,
it's a weird feeling. Like, I think that's why I can't vacation. Like, I always see people do these vacations where they go on a beach and read a book and lie on a beach, and I'm like, I can't do that.
I think I would lose my mind.
I think to myself, what is it that I can do right at this moment?
Yeah.
And I just, you know, but I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay with working and doing different things. And and so right now, like, I'm currently writing 2 books. So it's sort of been a different, you know, challenge of trying to run a business and then trying to do those projects. And
yeah, because books take a lot of time. So how do you manage creating 2 at the same time?
Well, they're both kind of pivoting. So one's pretty much almost done and one's just kind of started. So it's they're at different stages. So that
helps. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're not at the same stage because that would have been insane, but at different stages, but they both have time constraints. And I don't know, it's funny, John thinks that I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie in a way, and that's my adrenaline is deadlines. He thinks that deadlines is
mine too.
You know,
mine too. Yeah.
You know, the one that I'm working on right now, I was thinking, okay, well, if they gave me like a long period of time, would I have started at that period of time? Because I'd be like, well, I have so much time. I probably would have started it 6 months after I was given the go ahead or something. So
right.
I just feel like now, because the timelines are short, that you just kind of, I find I'm also forced to make decisions that I would like kind of waffle about for days or weeks. I'm like, no, I got to do this right now, right this moment. And not really
I totally agree. Yeah. Deadlines for me get me like super excited. It's a weird thing. Like even if I'm not given like an exterior deadline for something I'm doing for somebody else, I give myself a deadline. And I find that it's, you know, when I look back on things that I've given myself deadlines for and met them, I think about all of the hoops I jumped through just to meet that deadline that I could have just changed. Like I was the only one that I was answering to. I could have moved it out a week, you know, but I think like you, I think I love deadlines. I think they're great. And self-imposed ones seem to work pretty much just as well as exterior deadlines for me. So it sounds like you too.
And I'm always at this thinking of moving forward. I want to constantly be moving forward. And I feel that if I don't get through these deadlines, then I just feel kind of like stagnant or I'm falling behind, or I don't know. It's nothing that, you know, is external. Like you said, it's all like things that you're kind of internally imposing on yourself.
Right.
And I think that that's why, I guess, you know, I'm motivated by that, you know? And yeah, so I think that those sort of self-imposed deadlines that you're mentioning, I think for me, I use that as sort of motivation to get through a project, to kind of move forward. And it's interesting. One of the things that I kind of hear people say sometimes is that, oh, you work a lot, you're doing this, and and they're kind of impressed by that. And I always think to myself, it's like, well, why wouldn't I? Like, why wouldn't I? This is my job. This is my career. Why wouldn't I put my 100% into it and do a good job and kind of keep things going? Like, I feel that sometimes when, I don't know, I think for me, it's just like growing up in an immigrant family. I think, everything that you have, you're just so appreciative, like just to be able to even just have a meal a day is, something that, you kind of learn to appreciate. And I remember once when I was like a teenager and I was working in the mall, and I came home one day and I said to my dad, I was complaining to him, and I said, oh my God, I said, it was so busy today and it was just crazy. And I was just kind of going on. And then he was like, don't ever complain about being busy. That means you're going to have work. He goes, you should complain if it's not busy, right? And I just remember him saying,
interesting. That's interesting.
And so I kind of learned as I was growing up, not to complain about things, not to complain about feeling tired, not to complain about being busy, because if you're busy, then things are going well. Like you've got all the stuff that you're doing. And so it's interesting that when I do hear people complain about it, I always feel like, oh, so, it's just, there's just so much more to work on than to complain. Not that there's anything wrong with complaining. Yeah. And sometimes you have to vent. I understand that. But I kind of, I guess the way I see it is I'm trying to look at it in a different point of view. Instead of looking at the negative, trying to look at the positive of that aspect. For me, I'm like, I'm so appreciative of how well we've done for the past couple of decades, because I have seen so many friends and colleagues run businesses, things changing, them pivoting and doing different things. And there's so many things that people have to adapt to with this environment. And for me to be able to kind of continue doing what I do, I mean, like we make things and people buy them. Like, I think that's
they respond.
An amazing concept,
It is.
Like
it is.
My parents worked in awful factory jobs, for 12 hours a day and getting paid such small amount of money. And to me, that's really hard work. I feel like what I'm doing, it is hard work, but it's a different kind of hard work. It's, I'm in a comfortable space. I don't have to answer to anybody. I'm working for myself. And so I just feel like it's the best job in the world. And so appreciative of it. And I'm okay with making sacrifices for that,
Yeah. I always feel inspired when I talk to you because, you're right. Sometimes, days are hard and you do have to vent and things like that. And we all have, those people in our life that'll let us relive it and process it and move on. But I love the way, you look at your business, and I love the way you look at what you make. With such gratitude, and it shows, I think. And, we do what we do because we love it. And I think that when you truly feel joyful and grateful and inspired by what we do online, I feel like people naturally respond positively to that. So it makes the whole hamster wheel cycle get a little bit easier as we keep doing that. So yeah, we are lucky that we get to do, this really fun stuff that people respond positively to. It's like when I make a quilt, I have people that say to me, I would never have the patience to make a quilt. And I say to them, if we get into a conversation about it, I'm like, there are so many individual aspects to making a quilt, to the process, And there are parts of that process that I enjoy and parts that I don't enjoy as much. But like when I'm cutting fabric for a quilt, just when I think I can't cut another piece of fabric for a quilt, I'm on to the next part of the process. So it's not really that you need patience for like a long stretch, because there's so many different parts of the process that you can stay engaged if you are really visualizing what you want to do with it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Yeah, and I do that too within the studio, like during the day, like, work on one thing and then move to the next thing and then the next thing. So you don't feel, that kind of repetition, like, you're sitting there for hours sewing, then you go and you cut, maybe you press some fabric. Like there's just so much going on that it kind of keeps you sort of, engaged all day. So it doesn't feel boring, because it can get boring, because a lot of the stuff that we do is like busy work,
Yeah, it's repetitive. Yeah.
And they're stitching layers and layers together. I just find, like, you try to, that, I think that was also the reason why I was trying to experiment too, was to kind of, it's interesting because the experimentation, a lot of it has led to work that I'm doing. So I'm really kind of glad that that was sort of part of the practice, because I feel like when you're doing something for so many years, it's nice to kind of add things to the repertoire, because that's what I always try to tell people, because we're always sort of taught that if you're working in one field, that's your field, you kind of stay in your lane and then that's your thing. Like if you're a jeweler, you just do jewelry and stuff. And like our mutual friend Janine, that's what I love about what she does, her practice. It's like, it's about taking your, your artistry and experimenting with putting that on all these different surfaces, and then sort of reinterpreting those designs and seeing how things work. She works with metals, she works with painting, printing, clay, leather. It's just, that's the way I think as artists we should be working, and not feel that we're in this one particular medium and that's it. And I always try to encourage people to do that too. Like if you're doing designs and stuff, do some licensing, do some, different kind of things. It doesn't make your work, it just gives you a kind of, I think, a more richer body of work, having all different disciplines and mediums and stuff. And not to be afraid to, like, you don't have to love everything, you don't have to do everything, but it doesn't hurt to try it. And then you never know if something that you tried will actually maybe revigorate the practice that you're doing, or give you a different kind of perspective of how things are. Like when I started doing the punch needle work, for me, what kind of opened my eyes about it was color work, because if you look at a lot of like the bags and stuff that I do, it's very neutral, because the stuff that I make, people don't want to wear super colorful things. And I think that sort of opened the door for me with color. And as well as doing like patchwork and quilting, I just feel like all of that has really kind of helped me with color, because color's scary. I'm really scared of color, and I'm scared of color, I guess, because I feel like it's so out of my control. I think that's what it is.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
I just feel like it can go different ways.
Yeah. Well, and I've talked about this to my members and followers before, but I come from an apparel design background, and I worked with a French design team who they had their designs in France, and we had to translate them to the American market. And so we worked with very specific color palettes. Like we would tweak them and change them. And it's funny how what you learn in your 20s stays with you forever and ever, because I studied fashion design in college, but I never took a color class. Like I never studied the color wheel because it never fit into my schedule. I worked at the Esprit store in town. And so I had all my classes in the morning so I could work at the Esprit store in the afternoon and the evening. And so the color class never worked with my schedule and I didn't have to take it. But I learned how I think I got an intuitive lesson in color from the team that I worked with, and it still follows me to this day. And it's funny because people that are in the fashion world wear black and tend to have very stark, undecorated spaces at times. And I think it's so that the color can really come through, so that they're not influenced by their surroundings and things like that. But I know quilters can sometimes be they feel often like they just don't get color right for whatever reason. And so it's a process. Yeah, it's a process for sure. And I think you just have to work over and over and over with color and challenge yourself like you're doing to figure out what your aesthetic and what your point of view with color actually is. I think it just takes time. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do a lot of these like small patchwork pieces that are using up my remnants. And one of the comments that I always get when I have them all together is everyone's always like, well, you should make like this large quilt with it. And I see it. I see what they're seeing. But for me, it's like this fear. Like I feel like when it's small and tiny, I feel like it's manageable. And I feel like if I have to, do a composition of a larger piece, it would just completely freak me out because I would be like, there's too much color. Like, where do I put it all? And so there's this intimidation factor, and it's funny, a lot of the large pieces that I've done, like the quilts I've done, they're always kind of like monochromatic or something like that. Because I can handle that, right? I can handle that because I'm not making so many color decisions. But yeah, it's really interesting. It's to go bigger, to do, it's that fear of color.
Yeah, because if you take that little composition and you go bigger, depending on like how much of each of those fabrics you use, and suddenly it's, a red quilt or a white quilt or something like that. It's true. Yeah. It's different when it gets bigger.
Like when I was younger, I think it's just as you get older, that's why I think people always say how great kids art is, because kids are they're not conscious, like they're not self-conscious about it. And I think as we get older, we become more self-conscious, and
for sure,
you feel like every decision you make is so detrimental. Like it's not. Learn to kind of let go. Maybe I should just do it and just deal with it. I'm sure it'll be fine. It's just
it would.
As makers, your thoughts about things are always way more extreme than what the audience sees or thinks. We're always our. So it's interesting how that would be.
It is. So one of the things that we are exploring in my membership is sort of like challenges with the layout and logistics of your creative space, like how you store your fabric, how you store things if you are doing if you're using a lot of different mediums and things like that. And I thought it would be a great question for you because you are doing a lot of different mediums. And so how do you set up your space so that it is conducive to that and doesn't drive you nuts with, well, I mean, some days projects are everywhere. I'm sure they are here, and I'm just doing one thing, quilting. So what do you think about that? Do you have any thoughts on how you lay out your space to get the most out of all those different disciplines?
Well, for me, I mean, when I first started doing work, I was doing basically everything on the kitchen table. Like I did all the printing, the cutting, and I had this one closet in the hallway where I shoved everything in and I could never find anything. It was like this, and it wasn't even lit. So it was like this dark cave of stuff and I could never find anything. It was so unorganized. And so as we kind of grew into our space, the only way I can work efficiently is if every space has a designated purpose, right? So I have a sewing area that has everything that you need when you're sewing. You know, you have your ironing table, all the zippers are together, everything's together. And then I have a designated, you know, shipping table, an area that I print, an area that I cut fabric, and then lots of storage. And I find like the key to kind of being able to work with different disciplines is just to know where everything is and to have a good organization. You know, everything's like in clear containers, like clear bags or clear bins. And I don't worry about kind of the aesthetics of it, because it's not about having this, you know, pretty little studio space. It's about efficiency and about knowing where things are. Because I remember when I was unorganized, I would be buying things, and then all of a sudden I'm looking through things and I find 5 or 6 of that thing that I've already just purchased so much of. And
I
it
hate
just becomes
that.
very wasteful. Yeah, it just becomes very wasteful. And so, yeah, that's what I'm trying to do, is just to kind of keep it organized. And then when we move in a few years, I'm going to be in a space that's going to be a bit smaller than here. And so I have to be even more organized, because I have to have less things and I have to know where everything is in order to work better. But I'm okay with that, because I feel that a lot of the space that I have, it's like breathing space. But am I using it efficiently? Probably not so much, you know? Like I'm in the shop right now and we haven't been open for a few years. And then I decided that I don't want to be open anymore, because since we're moving and we're not going to have a storefront. And I kind of like the idea of just kind of working in isolation, you know, not having to sort of deal with customers and having interruptions, you know, during the workspace, work time. And I feel like that was like having a shop. We had it for like, you know, over 10 years. And I think that that was a really good time. And I just feel like kind of moving into a different phase. But I do feel kind of guilty sometimes that it's a big space that's not really being utilized, you know? I use it for Zoom
You
calls.
used it. Yeah, you used it. You used it for a long time, and yeah.
So I think
No.
we in the summer we had this guy from Philly come in to teach a electrical tufting workshop. And we had 20 people in the space, which I couldn't believe we had that many, because they had to have like a pretty good amount of space to work. And it was really wonderful. So I'm thinking like maybe that's a good way to use the space, is to have like these sort of pop-up workshops, or even just, you know, pop-ups to sell, and nothing permanent, but I think it's just a good way to kind of have people use the space. I'm still kind of thinking of it, but I think that that's a good way to go, is to,
I think
you know,
so too.
So hard to find for people.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
you know, not expensive to run a class or just to do a meetup or something. So I think
agree.
that might be go. You know?
Well, and plus people are starting to, at least I have found that people are starting to have, now that things are opening up a little bit more, I feel like people are getting, you know, a little more in tune with the type of learning environment that they would enjoy. You know, they've all done the online classes. We had the neighborhood studio tour in our town this past weekend, and it's like 30, it was 33 artists, and you can follow the map and go into their home studio and see their work and everything. And it's interesting because people really want, they're sort of craving that in-person learning. I mean, there's advantages to both, but I think that people who have enjoyed learning online and still enjoy it really crave that in-person stuff. And when you're teaching something like tufting, or, you know, a big project like that, it's nice to see how other people set it up, you know, and work side by side with somebody. So I can see that.
Yeah.
I think that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so even I might even start doing classes here, right? Because then it really cuts down on like travel and prep time and things like that. So, and I've already been asked by lots of people, like, when will you bring back the in-person learning? And so I think that that's a good way to kind of use this space as kind of learning and meeting space. And I even thought about doing like maybe once a month, like kind of like a mending clinic. and have people come and work on, their pieces, and I can help them through, and they can sit here and, we can have some tea and
just connect. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that that's a really good way to kind of connect with people in the community, and just to have interaction. So lots of different things that I'm thinking of. And I think I think once I finish this 5th book, I think that's where I will head, is to kind of do more of that and things like that. But for now, it's like just kind
all
of busy.
systems go on the book. Yeah. So you have a new book that's out right now. It's an embroidery book. It's really, it's beautiful. And tell us a little bit about that book.
It's really interesting. I was thinking, my publisher asked me to work on the book, and it was an immediate yes, because when I think about my sort of practice, and if I think about what was the medium or the technique that I've always been working on and always had with me, and it would be embroidery. I remember, doing little embroideries like on my clothes as a kid, and then as my kids were little, I would always have a bag with embroidery. Like when they're at the park, I'd be sitting there stitching. I would always have a bag of my embroidery things when I was doing all my traveling and teaching. Like it was just something that was always with me, because that's what I love about embroidery. It's portable. You don't really need like a lot of different materials. It's like a needle and thread and cloth. And, it's a really nice way to kind of express yourself. And I wanted it to do projects that were simple for beginners, but then also some projects that were a little bit more experimental. Like I did this one piece where it was actually a printout from Spoonflower of a photograph that I took of botanical image, like pieces, and then I stitched on top of that. And then I did a fabric book, because I just remember I was really inspired by like Louise Bourgeois, her beautiful textile books. So I wanted to do this little fabric book with some embroidery, and just try to do some projects that I didn't see. And what I like about my publisher is that they never restrict you in the projects that you wanted to do. And one of the things that I noticed in a lot of embroidery books that were out there at the time is that a lot of it, like to kind of put it, bluntly, they were kind of dumbing it down. Like they were making things so simple because they wanted it to be really accessible. And I just felt like it just was not challenging. And so I wanted to do projects where I was like, okay, this is going to be a little bit hard, but you know what, you're up for it. You can try.
I'm going to walk you through it. Right.
Yeah. And it wasn't like something where, like there's definitely projects in there that are really, kind of simple, because you have to have a good balance of both. But then also if they were simple, trying to interpret them into pieces that were, something that you would want to use or that you want to carry, and not like just, I just felt like a lot of the books out there were just way too simple. So I wanted to kind of create, a variety of projects
Just
that
a variety.
were, yeah. And I wanted it to be something where if it was like someone like me who has experience could pick it up and feel inspired by it, and not just a book for beginners,
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I feel that that's the problem with a lot of books, is that you're always catering to the entry level. But then for people who are, kind of have some experience or a lot of experience, don't really have anything to look to, So
yeah, because people like you and I, with a lot of experience in some of these things, there are days that I, love to, sit in bed with my coffee in the morning and look through a beautiful book and get inspired. And it can lead to anything, and I think you're right. It's like, it's good for us to have books that sort of take it to different levels for different skill levels and that sort of thing. I think that's important for sure.
Yeah, and also like with like the previous book that I did on invisible mending, it was also about the books that I saw. There's the books that I saw that were out there were really focused on just kind of like darning and patching. And I wanted to kind of include things like, what if you have something that there isn't anything wrong with it, there isn't a hole, but you don't want to wear it anymore? So like, try printing on it, try embroidery, embellishment, or like something to kind of refresh it. And so that was sort of something that I thought was kind of good to add. And then also the idea of taking things that you already have, like remnants, and then trying to, create something different with that. So it wasn't all, it was about repair. It was also about, the idea of sustainability as well, of not being wasteful.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
It was sort of, so that was the other thing that I had noticed too, with what I saw out there. And you have to think about that, what's out there, and how your book will fit within that sort of grouping. Because you don't want to just kind of repeat what's already out there, because what's the point, right? I mean,
what's the point? You have to have a point of view. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think that's been kind of fun to sort of interpret it that and work on those projects. And I guess I guess I'm good at doing it because I'm writing more. But I feel like this fifth one is kind of my max for a while. I feel like I've been writing one every year, and it's kind of feeling like a bit of, I just need a break.
Yeah, books are such an undertaking. They really are. Yeah.
I think the only one that I have left in me, which I already asked my publisher, and they're not interested in doing it because they feel like it's not going to be a popular sell, is like a printing book, like block printing or
Really?
Yeah, they said that they've done some in the past, and they're just not a popular subject right now.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll have to bring back printing.
Yeah.
The love of printing.
And I love the aesthetics of your book. I think you guys do a really nice job with just the layout and the cover, one nice image. And I'm a sucker for any kind of mended denim on the cover of anything. But this is Arounna's Visible Mending book. And I pulled this out. I actually pulled it out last summer. I have this Everlane black cashmere sweater, and it's one of those pieces of clothing that's just like the perfect fit. The cashmere feels like it's really nice quality and like it's held up really well, but it had like a worn spot right here. And I got out your book to get ideas for mending it. And so I ended up mending it. And it's funny because it just got chilly in Santa Fe like 2 weeks ago. And we have a terrible moth situation here in the summertime, or we have had. So I always like put my sweaters in vacuum seal bags, my cashmere sweaters, to keep the moths away. And I opened up all of the plastic bags looking for that one sweater because I wanted to wear my mended sweater. I couldn't wait to wear it until the weather was chilly enough, because now it's like, I don't know, it's like I've added a little bit of myself in it. And my husband and I were sitting at the dinner table, and he's like, "You have another hole back here." I was like, "Oh, get to mend it." It's silly, but it's true. It's like you just add these layers of your life. And that's what I love about quilt making. It's like people have all this beautiful fabric that they save and they fold up and they put away for the perfect quilt. And I try to convince them, if they'll just pull it out and let me inspire them to make it and to put it in a quilt that's going to be out in their life, that they will look at, every day, and they'll never be upset that they have that fabric out in their life and it's part of their story now. Yeah.
Well, you can't take it with you when you die.
No.
I'll enjoy it now, right?
No. It's true. And somebody in my membership used the acronym. What was the acronym? I can't remember what it was now. It was stash, something like their fabric stash was beyond was larger than their life expectancy or something like that, meaning
Yeah,
you can't use it all. And it's true, you can't. Yeah.
yeah.
And I
I
know
remember.
with quilters, they have, like, they're often given a lot of fabric. I don't know if you're given fabric, but a lot of times they feel guilty moving that on, like passing that on. So they'll hang on to it. Or if it's a large piece, they think, oh, I don't get large pieces like this very often. Maybe I could use it for something.
Yeah,
But they'll hang on to the point where they don't even really like it that much,
yeah,
down the road. So
yeah.
it's good that we can
I,
alter it and change it.
yeah, I try to keep all that stuff at a minimum. That's why I'm trying to always make little patchwork things just to kind of move it and get rid of it.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
I
love
feel
that.
like I just feel less precious about things now. I used to feel more precious. I mean, when I was growing up, I had a Hello Kitty stationery collection that I hung on to the point where when I gave it to my daughter, like some things didn't work properly because it was just so old, and it just like the stickers didn't stick anymore. They just kind of popped off, and it was almost kind of sad. So I mean, like, there's no point in
Yeah.
I've been going through, because we've been kind of slowly trying to clean up, and like I had things in our basement, and I was thinking, okay, if I didn't look at it for like a decade, I don't need this. Like
You
I
don't
need
need
to,
it anymore.
yeah, like so in the springtime I usually have this sort of studio sale, and I'll collect all of bits and pieces of like threads and fabric and just notions and things that I'm not using, and I just sort of bundle them all up, and then I just sell them all. And it's like the best feeling to kind of be lighter, and just have the things that you really need around you.
Yeah.
And
Well, you feel lighter. And I don't know about you, but if there's a perfectly good and interesting piece of fabric that I'm not going to use, I'd much rather it be used by somebody than just sit somewhere and dry rot and, not and be unusable 10 years from
yeah,
now or something like that. So,
yeah, it's great. I love it. I'm gonna have another one, I think, at Christmas time, another sort of sale of things that I thought I had put out there and I forgot. So
yeah. So do you have it in your shop?
yeah, I have it in my shop, and
Yeah.
it's really popular. I remember the one that we had in the springtime. It's around Mother's Day weekend. We didn't have one, for a couple of years, and it was like there was like a lineup down the street. It was crazy, and
Wow.
everything was just, and it was, and well, the thing was, a lot of people were annoyed because of the way I did the system, because of COVID, and there was, a couple of people that were in the space that were immune compromised. And so I didn't want like all these people coming in. And so we were just doing like maybe like 5 or 6 people at a time. And then what happened was those 5 or 6 people took all the good stuff.
All the stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the people who were still in line came in, and they were just like, oh, it's all gone. Because usually the way it works is we open the door, and like, tons of people come in, and it's like a feeding frenzy because people are trying to grab things. And that's kind of, I mean, I don't know if they like it, but I think it's kind of a fun environment.
Yeah.
And there wasn't like that. It was just very calm, kind of doing things. So
it's hard to know how to do it post pandemic, it's we're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, so the one in December, I'm gonna just let them all in. So
yeah.
they'll love it. I'll be like, so take one.
And so tell me, what's next for you? You're finishing one book, you're still working on another book. Tell me what's next.
I think for me, what's next after the books is, and we talked about this before, is working more on like the YouTube channel, trying to create more content there. I really love kind of sharing information. And so, I do that on Instagram, but it's all like very short and it's kind of curated. I want it to be more of like a long version, and I feel like YouTube is the only platform that will allow that kind of longer conversation. So I'd like to do more of that, and I think just kind of working towards our retirement plan, and kind of, I'm trying to kind of phase out the production work slowly and move into more. The way I think I want to do it is kind of like the way Janine does it, where she works on a body of work and then she releases it. And I feel like that's the way I want to work, rather than have like a body of things always online, because you're constantly having to kind of keep that in stock and going and things like that. And my mom, she helps me. She works for me, and she does like a lot of the sewing, and she doesn't want to do this anymore either. She's kind of almost 70, and she said she wants to travel more and retire. And she's been gone for 6 weeks. She's been in Thailand and Laos, and so she's coming back at the end of the month, and she's enjoying herself. And I see all her pictures on Facebook, and she's having a great time. She doesn't want to be sitting here sewing, and I don't want her to be sitting here sewing.
Right.
And so that was the other reason why we wanted to kind of change things, is because she wanted to kind of move on, and I can't see doing this without her. So
well, and that's the beauty of like having your own business. You can plan and evolve accordingly, I think.
For sure. But I think it's just more the same, really.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you're not going anywhere, and you have to come to Santa Fe.
Yes, I will. I have to plan a trip next year, for sure. Like maybe in the time when there's less of the big bugs. Like,
this time of year is pretty good.
Fall?
Fall.
Yeah,
I would say fall's really pretty. It's really pretty where we live. We do, the cottonwood trees are changing and they're beautiful, and the temperatures during the day are really pleasant, and then at night you just add a layer, and I think it's a good time to come. Probably spring too. We've had a huge amount of rain this year, more rain than they have seen in decades, and honestly, in some ways it is. So as far as like, I don't think we're in a drought anymore, but the interesting thing is that, this the soil here is not really the type of soil that can absorb all that water. And so it turns into, like, our road out in front of our house is a dirt road. So, you do a little sliding, trying to get straight. It's got its own challenges, but like it rained 2 days ago. It rained the entire day and rained for half the day the next day. And it's just so, we're in the high desert. It's just super weird that there's so much rain. Yeah. And coming from Seattle, I'm like, I didn't really buy into all this.
Yeah. Well,
lived through that.
The whole world is just gonna, there's so much going on, like natural disasters.
I know. Yeah.
Who knows what else is gonna get affected?
I know. But spring or fall. But we would welcome you anytime. You have lots of friends here, so anytime you want to come and visit us. Thank you so much, Arounna, for this. You are so inspiring to me, and I always get such a charge after we chat. So I appreciate it, and good luck on the books. Good luck on the studio sale you're planning for, and good luck with everything.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you for having me. I always chatting with you. It's always nice.
It's fun. Nice. Yeah.